Grief is the practice of feeling instead of numbing. I work with grief in a communal way. I believe in being supported in the presence of grief. I truly believe that we need each other to heal. I cannot heal by myself. I can heal in community. And the power of releasing, and once something is released, there is space to hope and create a better world.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge shared through authentic, heartfelt communication will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome back to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, and today I have a very special guest. She is the founder of Movement Liberation, an organization offering embodied and somatic healing workshops and retreats for the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And that manifests in many different ways that she is going to tell us about. So welcome to the podcast, Valerie Chafograck.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I met you here on the grounds at Yandara. She's going to be leading a retreat here. I hope it's okay that I'm saying that. Next year, so keep your eyes and ears out for that. And I would love to hear from you a little bit about how you started this work.
Okay. So Valerie Chafograck, she, her, creator and founder of Movement Liberation. I founded this organization in 2019 at the time where there was riots, and I felt a need to reflect what was happening in the external world and to link that to what was happening on the dance floor. I've been teaching since 1995, so many years, and mostly to spaces that were predominantly white. I'm myself biracial, and I could tell that people of color were coming and leaving and never really staying on my floor or on any floor. And I'm curious, so I asked them, what is it that makes you come, that attracts you to my floor, and then you don't necessarily stay? And what I heard was, we need safe space to be in between us and not under the white gaze. Having the background in anti-racism that I have, I understood what it was, because I was experiencing myself as a teacher, those microaggressions or those microaggression. So I decided that it was time for me to redirect my attention to my people. And when I say my people, I'm talking mostly about people of color, Black, Indigenous. And I was like, okay, how can I create something that fits these needs, that caters this need? And I'm someone who is passionate. So I decided to go ahead and created dance floor where people of color, Black, Indigenous are welcome, and where we can be us with our culture, with our music, with our songs, with our languages, with our past, with our history, with our lineages, and find healing together without the white gaze. What I mean by white gaze is really the way dance has been packaged under one umbrella, like a fits for all. And it doesn't necessarily fit all.
Yeah.
Especially when we are talking about dance as a healing, dance as, a way of expression. I'm not necessarily talking about choreography, because what I do is really free form. And I put on the first workshop that I named We Are Our Ancestor Wildest Dream, and put the word in the community, and I had 45 people showing up, and I was like, wow.
People want this.
People want this. People need it. The response was incredible. And I was really created as I was going. It was not necessarily done before. So I felt like I was a pioneer, a trailblazer in this path. And now we are in 2024, and there is nowhere I would rather be. This is my path, and now I have collaborators. So along the way, I have asked mostly women to come and join me. And Movement Liberation is very diverse, not only because we are catering a practice for women and people of color, but as well diverse in gender. Some of us are queer, some of us are trans, some of us are heterosexual, but it's important for us to have a reflection of different ways, different people, and inclusion, basically.
Yeah, that there's not just one way. We're used to seeing mostly white faces on TV and ads and all of that.
Yeah.
It creates kind of a dissonance, right?
Yeah. Creates a dissonance, and it can create harm as well, because what is true for white culture is not necessarily true for Black culture, or for Latinx culture, or for Asian culture, or for indigenous culture. And we are a big umbrella, even within us. We are not the one fits all. I mean, Black people have a different culture than Asian people, but we find safety in having a space, in having a sacred container, a safe container where we can find expression. And it is through movement and through dance, but it's as well through mindfulness, it's as well through rituals, where we honor our ancestors and where we come from.
I love that. Could you speak a little bit about really in what ways the movement or the practices that you teach and practice, how does that help us, well, first connect to our ancestors, which I love that because it's really honoring who we are by honoring everything or everybody that needed to exist before us in order for us to really be here. So speaking about how that connects to connecting to our ancestors and to healing.
The first word that comes is reverence. Reverence for the people who came before, for the teaching that came before, that informed my teaching. Because even though, what we all do can seem like innovative, we tap into old knowledge, old teaching. So, and trusting as well, there is a reverence of all the practices and the knowledge that lives within our body. And then when you give space and time and trust, that this knowledge is going to come out naturally. So it can be through ritual, It could be through prayer, it could be through music, it could be through all of it mixed together, which is usually what happens in a workshop. There is an arc, there is a practice of awareness where we can start, for instance, by walking, just walking, the simple practice of walking. And where I ask people to bring awareness that they are actually walking the path of their ancestors, that their ancestors walked before them.
That's so beautiful.
Awareness is always a portal, the point of entry, I would say.
Yeah.
And then after that, there is music that can bring you to how our ancestors were expressing themselves. I mean, drums were played for the harvest, for asking for rain, for death from birth, from so many. I mean, music was part of everything in the culture. So we include this as well. And then the use of voice as well. That's interesting, I would say. The use of voice, and what comes to me right now is actually the practice of listening.
I love that.
The practice of listening, because the healing comes from really being an open vessel to what wants to come through. And what wants to come through sometimes is a prayer, sometimes it's a dance, sometimes it's a moment of pause where you will feel in your body, where am I being moved in my body now? Where are the vibrations in my body? I mean, Black people, for instance, we have a great relationship to our feet. It's, where am I stepping? What am I stepping into? And the listening of what's happening in the room as well. When we get together, there is a field that is created, a field of presence, really. That just by itself and on itself is magic. So presence, awareness, music, listening, and being there for each other as well, witnessing each other. Because the practice is a practice. Yes, I show up on the dance floor and I'm my own person, and I cannot heal by myself. I can heal in community.
What is the power of community in the process of healing?
The power of holding each other, the power of witnessing each other, the power of seeing yourself in someone else.
Yeah.
When you see your suffering in someone else, your pain in someone else, when you see someone having a breakthrough and having a moment of joy, having a moment of release, having like an epiphany, it creates ripples in the whole community. So there is not healing in isolation.
Yeah.
I really believe that very, very strongly. So that is powerful. And there is a witnessing practice that happens in conscious dance, which is quite amazing, that invites you to have compassion for each other, to be just a witness where you don't have to judge, but you are actually wishing this person well for their process, for their healing process. And you are really being like wind in their wings,
Yes.
It's like, I want that for you, I wish you well. And just your breath, your breathing presence is wind in their wings.
I love that. I think that's such a beautiful and accurate analogy. And I also can definitely relate to that in experience of being in healing movement communities or places. Not too long ago, I was in a women's circle, and we were doing like a sort of healing dance. And part of it was an exercise of really standing in front of each other, not speaking, looking at each other, And I feel like it was what you were just describing, kind of witnessing with compassion the other person. And what came up for me was I was looking at this woman that shared not too long ago about the struggles she's going through and her self-image, and everybody with our own story. But I could look at her and I was like, she is so beautiful, she is so pure, she is whole, she's a human, and just for that she's worthy of love. And in that same breath I had so much compassion that sometimes we don't see ourselves in that way. And that had a very healing effect also on me, because I could see it in another person, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm too hard on myself.
Yeah, mirror. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would add to that as well that it's really an opening as well to get to know people that you would never get to know in such a deep way. When you take away the language and you are just with body language, the body will express things that language cannot express, and will touch your heart in such a deep way that there is an understanding, there is a communication, there is a download that happens when you see someone moving, where you don't necessarily need to know the backstory, because you see the essence of the person. And I think this is the beauty about movement. That's the reason why I'm here talking to you. It's very, language oriented. Yeah. And yet, sometimes I feel I know people and I don't necessarily have spoken to them, because the body tells so much. We all have patterns, and that's such an incredible beauty. And such a powerful part of my work is to see someone, who will have a posture. You can tell, oh, this person has been going through this or through that. You can see oppression moving through the body. Because I really believe that the body never lies.
Yeah, that's it's so true. It reminds me of a practice a friend of mine was teaching me. When you close your eyes next to another person, you can, in a way, feel them much more closer and in a more sensitive way than sometimes when you see them or even speak with them.
Yeah, because you tap in the world of sensation. I mean, the voice, the language is so predominant in our society that we forget all those subtle ways of connecting to each other.
Yeah.
And sensation, when your eyes are closed, you will relate to the warmth or to the sound.
Or the energy.
Or the energy of a person, and you will actually connect to a field that you might not necessarily be aware of when you speak to the person.
Yeah, 100%. So tell us a little bit about this work. Do you find that there is a certain background or social life experience that draws people to this type of healing modality more?
The people that are attracted to the dance floor are from age 18 till my oldest student is 88-year-old.
Wow.
So just to give you an arc of the different body capability. So it will attract people who are aware that in their body is the key to healing. They often have done through talk therapy or through different modalities, have had some level of healing, and yet, whatever is done up here and doesn't include all that is incomplete.
Yeah.
So,
meaning the head and not the body.
Exactly. So Some of them are curious and total beginners. Some of them are experienced movers. Some of them are single mother who have never had any opportunity to take the time to pay attention to their body, to what their body might have to reveal to them. Some people carry trauma, some lighter than others. I mean, trauma is such a big word and such a big umbrella again. Some people have racial trauma. Some people may come with abuse. Some people may come with pure anxiety, which I think now everybody has a bit of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in 2024 in the world I'm living in, I think we all have some kind of anxiety.
100%.
So it's a place to find yourself and to have a moment to really go, okay, I'm here for me, I'm here with other people, and what can happen that opens the door to healing. Among Black, Indigenous, and people of color, because I work on those floors now mainly, there is a lot of racial trauma, definitely. And when I say racial trauma, it can be related to nowadays events that happen and that traumatize people, but it can be as well intergenerational trauma. Coming from, as a Black woman, for instance, I mean, I carry in my bones the trauma of my ancestors that were in the transatlantic slave trade. So this is something which is more intergenerational, more than personal. So trauma is personal, is collective, and is intergenerational. So people don't come labeling themselves saying, hey, this is trauma. This is who I am. But all the practices on the floor address trauma in I want to say in a gentle way, and the word gentle here is used very mindfully, because you will have to take a gentle risk to be with your trauma. And it's gentle because you can't just go ahead in with, you can't just be brutal with trauma. So I'm going to give you a few examples, for instance, and I'm going to talk about myself because this is who I know the best, I guess. But as a Black woman, I've spent my whole life working hard, really working hard. And for me, rest was always a challenge. Like really giving myself space and time to rest was like, I had always something better to do. I always felt that I had to take care of things and to teach and to be an activist and to take a stand for causes that are, dear to my heart, to a point where I realized that it was a trauma response. Because my ancestors that were slaves, when they were stopping working, got killed. When you were a slave, if you were stopped working in the plantation, you were probably beaten or killed. So in my bones, through my grandparents, through my grandparents, is carrying this notion of don't stop, otherwise you die. So I have brought awareness to that because I saw myself as like, it's brilliant to be working in something you love, but if I kill myself trying to dismantle what I want to dismantle, where there is no purpose into that. So I had really to open myself to the possibility that rest will be part of my healing. And for me, that was one of the most profound realization, that when actually I'm not doing anything, I'm undoing my trauma.
Wow.
That if I take a nap, this is of service to undoing my trauma, because Black people have always been used to work hard and to work for others and to work for free. And free labor was something real. So another part of that for me would be, in my own self-worth. I have been doing so much volunteer work all my life. I respect and admire to be a volunteer and to be of service. And yet when it was time to be well paid for who I am and what I do, which is extremely valuable, there was always like a reticence somewhere in the background, like, can I really ask for that much money?
How did you navigate that?
I navigated that with help of Black women who have been going through that before me. I love working with elders. I find them being my best teachers. And have them really nudging me, going, hey, your work is important, your work is incredible, please stand for that. Free labor is, we are not in the plantation
That
anymore.
Is the healing process.
This is the healing process.
Yeah.
And we have this saying in Twin Black Women that, we are not in the plantation anymore. But it took, time.
So
It's a process, but it means so much that we are in this together. So I believe as well that in part of this healing of trauma, solidarity, community care is major. As I said, trauma is personal, but the healing is communal.
Yes.
I really do believe in that.
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra, to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings, and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website yandara.com to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode. I love that, and I find that it's when you kind of like remind yourself, oh wait, that's me going in the pattern, the old pattern again. Let us, or not even reminding yourself, allowing the community to remind you.
Yeah, there is a reframe. It's a reframe. Trauma, to heal trauma, it's really great to reframe, because
what do you mean?
A reframe meaning trauma is often linked to behavioral patterns that we keep going once, or behavioral speech, the way we speak. So reframing, saying the same thing but differently, actually, no, I am not going to work for free. My work is valuable.
Yeah.
And I'm going to value myself, and it's okay. So it's reframe, it's retraining, and letting others help you. I mean, I don't know, you are a woman, I'm sure you are going to relate to that. We have been now, a lot of us raised to be independent and self-sufficient, and yet it can be a trauma, because then we out to ask for help. That's part, that can be a trauma too. Everybody, every woman, I'm sure, can relate to that. And for me, learning to ask for help was like one of my biggest breakthroughs, that I cannot do it all by myself.
It's still a hard one for me, I have to admit.
But it's reframed, every time I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it by myself because it's easier. Reframe it. Actually, no, it's not easier. There is another way.
Yeah, and I find that when we go to the natural or the easy way for us, which is repeating the pattern, we're ingraining the trauma deeper in ourselves, and in that way, we are keeping ourselves under that oppression.
Absolutely, 100%. That's the reason why I truly believe that we need each other to heal. We need each other. I mean, personal work is important, you know. I'm not denying personal work.
Right.
I'm saying that it's personal work and communal work.
I love that.
The same way I see personal liberation in conjunction with collective liberation.
I love that. So how does one start to figure out really where are the traumas, or what are the traumas that they're holding?
You mean how the participant can identify that?
The participant or the listener?
Okay. Usually there is a repeated pattern or a repeated way of being that creates suffering.
Yes.
Where there is suffering and where there is repetition of suffering or of pain, there is trauma often. Because nobody likes to suffer again and again, and yet we all do at some point or at some levels or at some degrees. So usually that's the indication of there is trauma. Anxiety as well is a big indicator of trauma. Mental health is a huge indicator of trauma.
Yeah.
And when I say mental health, again, it's such a big umbrella, but where there is deep anxiety, where there is lack of sleep, where there is depression, there is usually trauma associated. And trauma can be insidious. So it's, again, this is where I feel like it takes a village. It takes a village or a team to assist, to help oneself.
I love that you mentioned that, because I think many times, or at least it is kind of framed in this way in our culture, that if there is a mental health issue, it's like your fault, or something is wrong with you, and then not enough taken into account, like what happened to you. Oprah speaks about it. She really taught me this question of like, it's not about what's wrong with you, it's about what happened to you.
Yeah, what happened to you and the systems as well that you live with. Yeah. I mean, we are living now in a system which is called capitalism. You know, that makes us, the bodies have to work, have to produce. We are really little machines. Yeah. The body is not meant to be a machine producing. Right. The body is meant to be fluid, is meant to be creative and healthy. And so all those systems, you know, capitalism, racism, sexism, all the ism, and there is so many, are part of this system that creates trauma. So no, it's not an individual, it's not nobody's fault. Yeah. It's really good to look at a wider vision. I said, you know, rather to narrow your lens is to really open up to the wider view. Is what environment this person has grown up with. Which location this person has grown up, what is the ancestry, and then what is the life of this person now. I mean, a person who lives right now in Palestine is probably highly traumatized. A person now who lives in Congo, where there is child slavery, is definitely traumatized. All those are different cases. And yet, they are all of service of capitalism when you look at it. You know, one is like we are trying to make iPhones. I mean, there is as well a politicized lens of my work. I don't want to get too much into it, and yet I want to name it, that I consider myself as a politicized healer. Because where there is trauma, there is as well an opportunity for social change.
What do you mean?
I mean that not everybody has the same access to resources. And for healing, you need access to resources. That's and true. This is part of the social tapestry of our world. So when there is no access to resources for healing, there is a need for social change. So I look at my work as well like this, as how can I not be a space holder for people who want healing, but how can I be a space holder and an activist as well to make change in the world at large?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in the individual, but I'm as well interested in the biggest system change. So I am as well an activist. One doesn't go without the other.
I love that, and I really do appreciate it. I think that the place that we are now in the world in general, I think that it's a pretty global thing that's happening now with the disparity between the governments that are leading us and the reality of what people are actually living. So we need more activists and more voices for social justice and equality.
Absolutely.
And I guess I'll ask you, because, you know, in a way, when I think about it, I feel so small in face of the huge change that needs to come. And I see it in a way coming to kind of sort of a climax that, because it seems that it's getting worse and worse.
It is.
In a way.
It is.
So maybe from your experience, you can advise people how can they be activists in their own way and contribute to this equality in the fabric of humanity, really, as a whole, without oppressing someone else in the process.
Yeah. So there is few avenues that come to me when we talk about activism. First, to like wrap up, if there is no way to wrap up, but this conversation about trauma is when you become an activist. It's a way to reclaim your power. So that is healing trauma. Is regaining your power. So whichever is the trauma, I will always encourage people to find a way to reclaim their power, because it is healing. Then, yes, you are right. We live in a world now which is collapsing. And it's interesting. One of my teachers, I was listening to him on IG the other day, and he was saying, the way we talk about apocalypse, the apocalypse is going to come. The apocalypse is happening. Yeah. We are it. Yeah. And so in all those collapses of different systems, is how can we find our calling? I would say, for me, it's a calling. And I would say there is few things. There is capacity. Ask oneself, what is my capacity now? Where is my heart? And what is the orientation of my heart? As a Black woman who had a lot of oppression around race, it was clear for me that I had to contribute to the liberation of people of color and Black and Indigenous. But at the same time, I created an organization for 7.5 years where I was feeding the homeless, because I was like, I live in California, which is one of the richest state of America, where everybody is like, not only eating well, but having surplus. And there are people in the street that were not fed well. So my heart was moved by them every day when I was driving my car. Yeah. And one day I was like, okay, I'm stopping today and I'm going to go and talk to this woman and I'm going to ask her name. So that's an entry point. Right. It's a human entry point to stop dehumanizing people, going, oh, the homeless are over there and me, I'm over here. And I was teaching my students, I was like, we all are talking about community. Well, when you get out of class tonight, go and talk to someone that usually you don't talk to. Yeah. Stretch yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone, because activism takes that courage. So stretch yourself out of your comfort zone and go and talk to the homeless. And this is, for me, the way it started. And I used to live in Venice Beach, and there was this Black man, every morning at 6 a.m., he was climbing those huge garbage bins, putting himself in the garbage. Those were like huge garbage, and finding scraps of food to feed himself. And one day I was like, enough. I'm just gonna go. I went down in my PJs and I was like, what's your name? And his eyes were down and his body posture was shameful because he was just getting out of the garbage. He was like, my name is Sonny. I was like, Sonny, I live right here. This is my window with my boyfriend, and every night I'm gonna feed you. Now, instead of cooking for 2, I'm gonna cook for 3. That was what I could do. That was my level of like extending myself and saying, okay, I'm gonna make a difference. I fed Sonny for 1.5 years, and he used to say, oh my God, I have a private French cook, which was the truth. It was fabulous for him. Yes. And every morning he used to put a Tupperware clean at my door, empty, and I would fill the container and I would deliver to him. So that was a way to be an activist.
Wow.
I was as well in the street when George Floyd was murdered.
There.
With thousands of people because I wanted a bigger change. And then I had to step in the street with the world, with people, because I thought enough was enough. So there is different, degree. I can write letter to the government as well and sign petition, and that would be a way to be an activist. There is so many ways. I think the most important is not to freeze and to numb. What I witness right now is with social media and television, I don't, but a lot of people watch like violent film. So now they can't make the discernment between what they see in a movie and the reality of real people dying during war.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's again reframe, like remain human and say and ask oneself, what do I want to do? Right now the students are in the street in the state, like in encampments doing silent demonstration. Maybe someone wants to go and feed the student. You won't be in the encampment doing the demonstration, but yet you will support a cause that your heart is moved for. Or, there is so much choices. Yeah. I could come with a list, but no action is too small.
Yeah.
And go big or go home. That's me too.
Interesting. I just want to say about the students protesting. I think you can protest without harming other people. And I wish that before somebody chooses a cause, to fully educate themselves on the situation and the background and the history and everybody involved, which I think isn't happening, and also about who's funding your protest, which is also a big part of it, but let's leave it at that. And I also want to say that now, like, I'm here in Mexico and I left Israel for just for this trip, and going back to Israel, it brings up fear for me and stress because it is such a hard situation there right now. And just a few days ago, I was talking to a friend here about returning to Israel, and I do, like, in one side, I'm like, wow, I'm in paradise. Why don't I just stay here? And on the other side, I'm thinking, like, we need more people in these places that are difficult, that are the people that put humanity first and try to at least bring some spaces of healing, in a yoga class or in conversation, into the place of darkness, because it is so easy to just say, like, it's too late. It's
I
too
give
far
up.
gone. Yeah. But without the people raising their voice and speaking up and being brave enough to talk about peace, which can be controversial in itself, then really we don't have hope. So just being that person, even when it's hard, I think that's also activism in a way.
Absolutely.
I would love to speak with you about your work with grief, because I know it's a big part of your work. Could you tell us about it, please?
So grief is the practice of feeling instead of numbing. So in my work, I work with grief in a communal way. Again, because our ancestors were not crying alone, were not feeling the grief alone. They were coming together and holding each other. And I believe in that. I believe in the holding of each other. I believe that you grieve as much as you have loved. So I believe in being supported in the presence of grief. I believe in the openings that are created. It's like pockets of opening in the body and the emotional body as well. When you start crying, you release, you create space. Everybody, usually when you have a good cry, after that you feel better or you feel more spacious. Always. So imagine that done in your community. Imagine when you are the one who has the capacity to hold the one who is falling apart. The power of what you give, but the power of what you receive as well by holding. So there is this play of giving and receiving in those grief rituals, the power of supporting and the power of releasing. And once something is released, there is space to hope and create a better world. This is really what my compass, my North Star is like. I really feel like each time I do a piece of grief, and grief is not a linear process, so it happens in different ways at different times. Sometimes it's a wave that takes us and very, it's unpredictable, but I believe in let it move us and be there for each other. There is great opening, there is great healing. Is it conventional? No, because again, we have been trained of like, oh, I am sad, there is something wrong, maybe I have to hold it or to suck it up. I hate this, but there is so much about that, you are sad, just hold it, don't show it.
Hold it, or like, let me distract myself with so many things just to like stay positive.
Exactly. But what it is to create, to really hold grief as something completely sacred and who has a use and a meaning and of service to wellness. Really, I mean, it's when I work in my class, when we do a grief ritual, we work with music and silence, and the main guidance is when someone is crying, do not go to them to make them feel better, but we stay in the somatic. Place your hands in the back of their heart. Just that humans warmth when you grieve at the altar, because we build huge altar, and you are at the feet of your altar and you are releasing your sorrow, your sadness, and someone comes and sits next to you and doesn't try to make it better, but is actually there with you. This is humanity. And then there is as well the invitation and the welcoming of, if you want to cry and be loud, go for it. If you want to be grieving and being angry, go for it. because grief has so many flavors and it can't be just wrapped in a little ball and look pretty.
Yeah.
I think in getting
It
messy.
doesn't matter how much we want it to.
Exactly. I believe in getting messy. I believe in the power of like, let's be unraveling.
Yeah.
And then eventually at some point something else will be reshaped, I would say.
So is that the power of unraveling? What is the power of unraveling? Or allowing the space for
Giving yourself permission. When I teach, one of the words you will hear me say again and again is give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Well done. Beautiful. The power of affirming what is already taking place.
Yeah.
A good facilitator doesn't necessarily tell people what to do. A good facilitator affirms what's already happening and nudge it just a little bit.
Wow.
To get further.
I love that. It requires such a sensitivity and a connection to what is happening in the room with the people around you, and thank you really for saying that. That's so meaningful.
Yeah, we are told what to do in so many spaces that people who come to my floor, they don't come for that. And I'm not this type of facilitator. I have tools in my pockets that I will suggest. Those are invitations. But what works for one might not necessarily work for another at that time. So it's like you sprinkle the space, of different concepts, different practices, and people will naturally practice what is good for them. I truly believe that the body wants to heal. I mean, when you cut yourself, what does the body do?
It heals itself.
It heals itself. This is what the body is meant to be. Yeah. So the same way goes with trauma, the same way goes with everything. We just need a little nudging, a lot of support, a lot of loving, a lot of care, time, space, and each other. Yeah. Really.
And permission.
And permission, and encouragement, and then validation. Yeah. Often, because there is when you are in a moment of trauma, you are very often disoriented. It's hard to know what works, what doesn't. But when someone is here to tell you it's okay, keep going, and give you permission, I mean, really, all that is being a loving human being, and with some skills, obviously. Yeah. But remaining human. You were talking about humanity, and grief is really a practice of humanity.
Yeah, I love that so much, because really, as you mentioned, there are so many spaces, and just I feel like society and culture in general that are telling us all the time what we should be doing, who we should be, and then when we're different than that, because humanity has this whole range of emotions and states of being, then we can be hard on ourselves about like, why am I not fitting this expectation of myself or somebody else? And really, when we give ourselves permission to allow the whole rainbow of expression to move through us, and when we are held in that space and still loved, and also when our experience is validated, it is so important. I see that in my coaching practice. I can just say from like my experience with friends and family, and my own experience, it is a big gift that you can bring to someone.
And can you imagine as well when it's within your culture, when Black people are grieving with Black people, they will allow themselves to bring the way Black people grieve. might not happen necessarily when we are in white space, because we are like,
You don't truly
we try
understand.
to fit,
Yeah.
and you can't fit. Grief is not a cookie cutter. Yes, that's the expression. And everybody has to find their own way. So I really feel that for this practice and many other healing practice, hence the importance to be with your culture, with your lineage, with your ancestry. I mean, some people grieve loudly, some people grieve outrageously, some people grieve very softly, and all that is okay. But yeah, how beautiful it is to be with people who understand you, who have compassion, who are like, oh yeah, I know your flavor.
Yes, it's truly different when somebody has a similar background or culture to you. They understand, or at least a similar experience to you. They can understand your experience in a much deeper way. Yeah. Oh, wow, so much. And I really feel so expanded by this conversation. So, Valerie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
As a last question, I will ask you, what are you curious about right now?
Wow. Personally, I'm going to answer both personally and collectively. Personally, I am curious about, I just entered this practice for myself as I consider, I am 61-year-old, and I consider myself as a elder, so a young elder. I can't claim yet to be an elder. I feel like there is still some wisdom to acquire, but I'm slowing down, and I am curious about how can I still be a powerful leader, a powerful teacher, and pacing myself and slowing down, and not to be always in the front line or in the fire of the action, which I've been a lot of my life. So I'm really curious. This is my inquiry right now. And that's part of the reason I'm here in Mexico, to remove myself a little bit from so much fire that the States are for me, the United States. So that's my inquiry. And collectively, I'm curious, I'm passionate about peace. How can we remain human, stay in this space of seeing each other as human, and create a world where there is peace. This is my biggest inquiry, my biggest prayer. Every morning when I have my practice, I ask, please teach me how to be a better human. And it goes with, looking at people that I meet, but as well looking at systems, looking at politics, looking at countries. I'm curious how quickly we can come to peace. And how can I be in service of that? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about that as well.
Yeah.
Valerie, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, Yael. I mean, I'm deeply grateful. Yeah.
So am I. And I will put all of Valerie's information in the show notes so you can find a way to connect with her, hear about her offerings, her retreats, workshops. I'm sure many people are curious.
Thank you so much.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.